Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. We are so happy to welcome you to this talk with Andrea Merrell, guest curator of Ways of Knowing, which is our current exhibition at the James Castle House. My name is Rachel Reichert, and I'm the Cultural Sites Manager for the City of Boise and the Program Director at the James Castle House. I am joining you from inside the gallery, where you will see many of the works discussed tonight directly behind me. I'm here with Sierra MacGyver, who will be providing ASL interpretation for the event tonight. And of course, Andrea Merrell, who is joining us from inside the James Castle Collection and Archive. Hi, Andrea. Hi. Before we move into this event, I'd like to give a little introduction to the James Castle House. For anyone unfamiliar with us, the James Castle House celebrates the life and work of American artist James Castle through exhibitions, community programs, research, residency programs, and conservation of the historic spaces where Castle lived and worked for over 4 decades. The James Castle House is a program of the Boise City Department of Arts and History, which offers many other services, including public art, history programs, archives, cultural grants, and care and conservation. I want to thank the City of Boise for its ongoing support and for remaining committed to our work at the Department of Arts and History. We also would like to acknowledge the broader history of the land the James Castle House sits on. We recognize the ancestral, cultural, traditional, and unceded territory of the Shoshone, Bannock, and Northern Paiute people whose land the site sits on today. Before we get started, I'd like to just address a few housekeeping items. We are committed to making this program accessible. Today, we are integrating accessibility through captions as well as American Sign Language. Captioning is available by clicking on the live transcript at the bottom of your screen, then selecting Show Subtitle. You can adjust your view of today's presentation by selecting View Options and finding the view that best serves your needs. Today's event is being recorded and will be made available online in the coming days. So since the James Castle House opened in 2018, we have presented rotating exhibitions in our gallery as a means of educating our visitors and sharing Castle's work. These exhibitions have examined different parts of his practice and life through material use and subject matter, yet we have barely scratched the surface of his immense body of work. When given the opportunity to invite a guest curator to create an exhibition with us, we immediately identified Andrea Merrell as our first choice. Merrill has served as the collection manager at the James Castle Collection and Archive for over 25 years and has developed a remarkable depth of knowledge and familiarity with Castle's artwork. As a fellow artist, Merrill has come to recognize the persistent curiosity and perpetual study of the world necessary for James Castle to build the rich visual vocabulary which is inherent to his work. Castle had acute memory and mental agility that enabled him to roam his own mind, exploring every interest. His practice of taking inspiration from tools and materials from every part of his life resulted in a vast body of work that spanned media and subject matter. Ways of Knowing is a result of months of Merrill's thoughtful and insightful planning, offering us a unique glimpse into the complex network of connections she has discovered in Castle's artwork. Through a selection of over 130 original artworks, Merrill has created an exhibition that allows us to see the ways in which seemingly disparate works came together from the same curious mind. We are so grateful for the James Castle Collection and Archive for making this exhibition possible. They have been a fantastic partner on many projects with us since the beginning, and their generous loan of artwork for this exhibition is just the latest. The James Castle Collection and Archive, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is located in Boise, Idaho, and for over 2 decades, they have worked to maintain and share James Castle's artwork, artifacts, and historical documents. They came way before we did. They make work available for exhibition and facilitate acquisition of work through museums and galleries. They support access, public awareness, and understanding of James Castle and his work, and serve as an important research and educational center for James Castle-related projects. Their most recent project, they worked with writer John Beardsley and Yale University Press to publish the most comprehensive book about James Castle to date, titled Memory Palace, which is available for sale on our website for those of you interested. Many of you may know these kinds of endeavors don't happen in a vacuum. So I just want to offer a shout out to Lisa Pisano, Kate Brigden, James Argenbrog, and of course, Jackie Christ, who have dedicated so much of their lives to research of Castle at the James Castle Collection Archive. I'd also like to acknowledge our amazing team at the James Castle House, Kristen Hill, Mackenzie Dunstan, Sam Payton, and Jennifer Wybar, whose enthusiasm for Castle brings this house to life every single day. Tonight's presentation is going to be a little bit different from what we've done in the past. Following our conversation with Andre, we will not have a Q&A at this time. Instead, we are going to offer a very special surprise at the end of this talk. We will send out an email following this presentation with contact information in case any further questions come up or you're interested in learning more about our upcoming opportunities and events. And now I would like to welcome Andrea Merrell. Andrea Merrell was raised in Boise, Idaho, and has traveled and lived throughout the world, including 6 years creating art in the Gambia, West Africa. She studied art therapy in the early 1980s in Mexico, and later earned her Bachelor of Fine Arts at Boise State University in 1987. In 1991, Merrill was awarded an Idaho Commission on the Arts Fellowship, in which she had her first show at the J. Chris Gallery, which would later evolve into the James Castle Collection Archive. She has exhibited numerous times since then, including the 2007 Idaho Triennial Juried Exhibition at the Boise Art Museum. Merrill has served as the collection manager at the James Castle Collection Archive for over 25 years. Andre, it is such an unbelievable privilege to be here with you tonight. So welcome.
I appreciate the opportunity.
So I just thought I'd start out with asking you to talk a little bit how you first came to Castle and what your initial impression was.
The first time I ever knew about Castle was when I went to a talk by Sandy Hawthorne years ago. I happened to be with a friend who was an art therapist. And as Sandy talked, Shirley, that was her name, whispered in my ear, I see that he is integrated through his, I see in his art that he is integrated as a person. I thought that was an interesting observation. That was my first exposure to Castle. The second was when I was an artist with Jackie Christ, who I would like to say about her is that she's been, as we all know, a prominent figure in the Boise scene of the art world and also even the nation. And if it was not for her and her promotion and her prominent work with bringing Castle to be known as he is now, and to create and build this beautiful building that we're in that houses Castle, it is due to her and her efforts. And we're so grateful because none of us would be here if it wasn't for her. So I did become an artist with her gallery. And as a result, as you said, Rachel, I began to sort of work part-time to help out. And when, you know, there's always things going on, as there always is, and became sort of, you know, the Castle keeper, you know, by default, I guess. So I got lucky. But you know, it's interesting because my first impression of Castle's work, and of course, as we all know, the soot drawings, the classic soot drawings, are the things that the marketplace values, or treasures, notices, etc. Plus the constructions. But actually, in all honesty, they were my least favorite. I really, you know, resonated with the color work, the subtleties, and I don't know, the exquisiteness of the colored work, and then also the patterns. I didn't really understand the patterns exactly, but both of those were appealing. It was only later that I began to really appreciate the soot work And partly is because I began to understand relationships and understood and discovered how castle works.
So for those of you who may not be familiar with the various kind of categories of castle, we at the Castle House categorize castle through the lens of the soot and spit drawings, as Andre mentioned, color works, book works, constructed works, and text works. So there is quite a variety of ways of Castle's inspiration and investigation of the world around him kind of came through in the work. Andre, I'm wondering, as an artist, and I would say like an artist of the highest order, your work is absolutely amazing on its own. But what is it like to be an artist kind of responsible and working with another artist's legacy? Like, what is that like for you?
Well, again, I think that what's happened is that, Castle's work has like seeped into me like osmosis. And it's had its gradual effect over time. And people have used eloquent words and descriptions and phraseology and, beautiful comments and ideas and thoughts around Castle's work. But what I learned about a castle when I began to try to organize it, and that was lesson one, is that you listen to him. You can't, for example, you'll notice that in these boxes behind me that they don't have any words on them. They only have pictures. So that was the first lesson I learned, was that, I don't have any words, and neither did he. And so I guess over time, I've adopted some of his habits.
Andre, that's so unusual for an archive and a collection to be cataloged in a way without language. How has that been for you in terms of working with people who would come to the James Castle Collection Archive and are unfamiliar with your methodology?
Well, they have to step aside, sort of forget themselves, and enter this world of Castle. And part of that is by forgetting, the world as it is out there, and adapting to what Castle is trying to say, of which it's still enigmatic, even to me after all this time. It's still mysterious and enigmatic. So really, I think that strangely so, they adapt to the images, because you can readily see, because with the sit drawings, these are categorized according to place, which will come up. You'll probably ask me about that later. But so really and truly, when somebody comes into this space, because of the atmosphere and the feeling of it, they do adapt to it, and their mind goes to understanding Castle in a certain way really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you worked with curators, museums, and galleries from all over the world, literally, and you've helped scholars come to know Castle through this unique organization structure. Yet you've never sought out your own role as a curator. Like, you've never gone out into the world and offered that opportunity to other folks, other institutions, other organizations. What convinced you that now is the time, or to say yes to this opportunity?
Well, you did, for one thing. That's number one. Yeah, you did. And Kristen. So yeah, but no, I realized that because I realized I had to look kind of like deeper inside myself about things that I have assumed within my secret life that I had to really bring to the surface and acknowledge. And that is, in Castle's case, that I value him and his work so much that I really had to. And the other thing I had to realize too was that that I'm really the guide. I'm really only the person who, you know, presents Castle, and I'm not the person who translates what he does. I can only like show people. And you know, people would often ask me, well, you know Castle so well, can't you write about it or explain it? Well, I think it's because it is a poignant, silent world, and it is without words because it doesn't need words. And I realized then that really I'm just a facilitator and not the main person. And I was reluctant to also to expose my own biases about his work.
I mean, I think we all probably hopefully feel that way.
We'll talk about later.
I mean, that's a dangerous space to be in, right? As people who are working with another artist's legacy, to insert our own bias into our assumptions around Castle. What I think is really beautiful about Castle is that there's so much we don't know, right? There's so much we don't know. And I really like to lean in on that here at the Castle House. There's a sense of unknowing or mystery around things that people want to fill in the blank around. But I love occupying that space of not knowing. And I think you do that really beautifully there as well.
That's very true. There's a quote by Einstein or somebody that at the root of all art and science is the mysterious. And I don't know that there'll be ever any answers, but it's really immensely interesting to visually explore all of Castle's world. It's immensely interesting.
I think like as artists, because our team at the Castle House, just like your team at the James Castle Collection Archive, are all artists or come from an artist background for the most part. And I think that that space of not knowing is that space of creativity for us too. You know, it's like this space that we prefer to occupy in our own time, which I really love being able to celebrate that here in a physical space that's meant for the public. So
yeah,
I'm curious,
I think that's correct.
I'm curious, Andre, and this is a really big question, or really wide open question, not vague at all. What has Castle taught you, whether that's as an artist or as somebody who's working in the collection archive, or you know, somewhere in between? What has he taught you?
I think that the quote that's on your brochure here, your announcement about ways of knowing, those who love wisdom investigate many things, from Heraclitus, who's a philosopher from the pre-Socratic philosopher. I think that applies to Castle. Along with that is those who seek wisdom, investigating many things, can apply to all of us. And because I think we can all put ourselves in that category. And only one of the reasons that I've come to in appreciating Castle and how he has meant so much is that I see him as an icon of that exploration and that journey, which in fact ended up to make him a whole person. And he did that through his art. So I think, and he did so eloquently. And I think that that in that way, he's an example of embracing and embodying what it means to be wise. He may not have known he was doing that, but I really feel it and see it in his work and the journey he took. And I think that's kind of what my friend who was an art therapist saw.
And I mean, ultimately, that is the thesis, more or less, of the show, right? Sort of this exploration of a lifetime of working. You know, I think something really important to know about Castle is that he worked every single day of his life and was afforded that ability. And unlike so many of us who are trying to make art in our free time on the side of other things, Castle was kind of left uninterrupted to make work and make work frequently. And so in knowing Castle, it's hard to understand what he was working towards when we're looking at just a small selection of work. And even I'd say, you know, this is one of the largest shows that we've seen of Castle's work. We know there are other exhibitions that have shown a larger quantity, but the idea of a quantity in knowing Castle and understanding sort of the depth and breadth of Castle through just the sheer amount of work that he did helps us understand individual pieces better, which actually kind of leads me to my next question. You know, when we were working on the house, Andre, we had these great moments together where, you know, we discovered parts of the house that had never been seen before. And then simultaneously, you were discovering works that were clearly tied to the house that you didn't realize were tied to the house. I'm just wondering how understanding these spaces, and particularly this house and the shed and the trailer, have informed your understanding of the work.
I think that I was kind of already doing this, but it was greatly enhanced by the experience with you and working with the development of that Castle house. And because Castle had this ability, as you mentioned in your beginning statement, about his phenomenal memory. And he was able to see dimensionally, like an architect and or a chess player, and he could view things from all different directions. And it sort of made me dizzy in trying to identify where places were, because what I had begun to do that ties in with this is to categorize the sit work by the location. And for example, it was easy to, you know, spread out everything and then to put like with like and so on, and see, so that what came together with that was a very distinct group of work that was clearly either of one interior or one place in a landscape. And an area that was very prolific in his work was the Castle homestead. And so as a result, but it was confusing because of Castle's way of seeing in all of these directions. So I think you and Byron greatly helped with that discovery of exactly to visually actually kind of see the whole area as it once was then. And of course it changed over years, as you know.
Yeah, so when you say the homestead, I think you're referring to the Boise property, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Byron, just for those of you who don't know Byron Falwell was our architect on site and offered himself up in the most generous way of doing far more than what an architect does on projects like this, by treating the house as an archaeological project and investigating various aspects beyond drawing up plans and building programs. So Andre, just to kind of drill in a little bit more as it relates to this exhibition, we're talking about linkages, right? We're talking about how an artwork starts out as a blurred color way and moves into a structure. And that transition of many artworks that get you from point A to point B. When did you start noticing these linkages? Was it immediate, or did it take time?
No, that's a really good question, because we tried many different ways to inventory, for example. In the beginning, we just got small groups of work. We didn't have all the work. It was only later that then we began to categorize very broadly the different groups of work. And the sequence after that was when it was really a puzzle when you began to try to find things, specific things. So at one point, I just took everything out, like the soot, all the outside, we called it then, exterior, spread everything out and began to, as I said just a few minutes ago, put likes with like. And again, it's like lesson number one, listen to Castle. You can't apply your own logic to Castle. You have to really pay attention. So in Castle's mode, if we would have paid attention, and finally we did, is to put the locations together. For example, this one, this one is kitchens and stoves.
Up a little bit. There you go. Mm-hmm. You said kitchens and stoves?
Mm-hmm. Kitchens and stoves. Yeah, so anybody can kind of see. It's a little bit, jumbled right now, but yeah. And up there is right there is, vessels and dishes. So, it's categorized according to Castle, places and things, basically.
So would vessels and dishes encompass soot and spit, color works, constructed works? Would it be a grouping of all the different types?
No, it all changes. It all changes. Because the soot things are one thing, you can't apply it to the rest of it. You can only use that idea with the soot. You can kind of do it with the color and the other things, but no, you have to adapt. That's what you have to do with Castle. You have to adapt and not try to make a rule and follow it, because the rules are not going to work.
I've learned that here at this house as well.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
So, art history has taught us to look at work in a linear way, look at artists like bodies of work in a linear way. And I really feel like with Castle's work, it's like that rule is fully thrown out the window, and it's like a webbed network. It's like Castle can't be seen chronologically. You can't assume that maybe a drawing from the Idaho School for the Deaf and Blind happened while he was at the school. The only way to perhaps date a work has everything to do with the material that it was drawn on. However, we know that he saved those materials for years and decades, perhaps. And so there's really no way to fully date the work, but also the investigation goes beyond sort of a singular place in time too. Do you see it that way? Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. Here's another thing you have to dismiss is what time means. You actually have to just sort of take yourself away and be in another space, because after being with this all this time, I think we all here see it this way. It's like Castle's universe, it's Castle's world here, it's Castle's, and you can only look at it kind of as a whole, because that's what it is. It is frustrating you know, to know that there's so much and so everything's so related and so diverse and so exquisite sometimes that, you know, you want everybody to know everything so they can really see it the way we see it here. And it would be almost as if for Castle, I mean, yes, there's days and weeks and so on as there is with everybody, but it seems like time didn't exist with him because all of the work could be done, say, if somebody could extend his life in one day, it could be all done in that day. With all the diversity, that was his mind. That was him. That was his soul. That was his mind. And you see it in his work. But unfortunately, you could do thousands of exhibits and never get to the end of it. I'm not kidding. And with each one, you only see that snapshot. But you could make 10 books and you could make 20 or 30, whatever books you could make. You couldn't see it all, you know? I would love for there to be some sort of thing that would happen that you could see it all. So, you know, so that time, so many of our preconceived notions about life and living and time and whatever, you just have to forget it with this.
So perhaps everybody just needs to dedicate 20 years of their life to understanding Castle.
I don't know.
I mean, we have always talked about, you know, that moment you kind of like break through the surface with Castle and you start getting deeper. It's really hard to get out of that, you know, like you just keep going deeper. You don't stop, you know, like you understand one kind of perplexing part of Castle's work, which leads you to another, which leads you to another. And then all of a sudden you're sort of like fully gone off the deep end.
Well,
And
is this appropriate for me to show you an example of what you're talking about with
absolutely.
real work?
So I can introduce, those of you probably noticed there's a second or a fourth camera. And this is a camera where Andre can show some works that she has with us. So yeah, go ahead. Or I can pull up an image if you'd rather do it that way.
Yeah, I have an example. I have some examples right here.
And I just, real quick before you do that, Andre, I just have to say that when anybody gets the privilege of being in the archive with you, and the experience of being in there with you and all of that artwork, it is the most remarkable thing I think anybody who goes there has ever experienced, because it is tactile and it is overwhelming and it is almost spiritual because there's just so much going on. So thank you for sharing some works with us. So yeah, let's see if we can get this camera to work.
Okay, I can get up? Okay, so what I'll begin with is a room. It's a storage room, and you know, Castle's ability to, in fact, I'll mention this, that there's several different examples of this I could pull out, but he literally, you could take several different drawings that he did at different times and go completely around a room. In fact, sometimes in one drawing, you can really get the feeling and even evidence of all four sides. So that being said, this is only one example of what starts off to be one thing ends up to just, I don't know. I hopefully I'll get it. Okay, it starts off with this drawing. I don't, are you able to see that?
Yep.
This is, can you see it?
I'm gonna spotlight this so people can see it a little bit better.
Spotlight?
Yep, okay, so there we go.
Is that, oh, okay, okay. Okay, I can do this. I can see them. Okay, this is the room. And let's see, the other side of the room. This is one side of the room. This is the other side of the room. I'll have to do this. If you were really here, I could, no, I can't. Yeah, we'll have to have a time when, well, okay, maybe, okay, these are the two sides of the room, right? Okay, oh, that's good, that's good, okay. The two sides of the room, right? Okay, so, okay, what do you think this is? Well, if you saw it by itself, what, what? Okay, sooner or later, you can ask yourself what, but then can you see the relationship now between this and this? So number one, it shows that if you didn't have this, you couldn't have the richness of experience and understanding that you can with it. So then you also have to add this one, because on the other side of this one is this. The door's open now. You see? Can you see? Yeah, you can see it there. The door's the open door, closed door, same. You'll notice on the side here, in this case, that these are barrels. Well, if you were not to put these together and just had this drawing right here, you know, okay, these are barrels. But, and even this one, Castle is so clever. This is often what he does, is put something on the very edge, and there's a lot better examples in this, on the very edge where, okay, that is the barrel. There we go. So here's the barrels. So we got the other side of the room in another kind of view, very close. We also have constructions of these very barrels. So, okay, okay, we're not done yet. Okay, let me get this correctly. Okay, now here comes different styles. Okay, this one. Again, if you were to see this one all by itself, okay, what, gosh, what is that? Well, here we go. Can you get this?
Yep.
Yep. Well, okay, look another step further, and look what he's done. He's not on the bigger room size drawing. He's you know, isolated a little rectangle there, diagonal rectangle, right? Okay, if you put that rectangle right side up, then you got something like this, you know, which he would take out of here and just put on put on this. This is a construction. See what I mean? Okay, it's not only that. Okay, let's go a little bit further. Oh, here we've got a smaller drawing, which then includes part of the window and the shelf right here. So if you didn't have all of it, think how, you know, richer this gets if you have all these. Not only that, here is two what we call wall sections that depict this grid pattern that is in this room. So in all of these, I've got spread out that you can't see, but you've experienced it. Then, if you look closely at this particular one, let me see. Let's move this out of the way maybe and go to a different kind of thing. Okay, in this one, right here, you see that he's added back in the background there, the little circles. And you see then the correlation in this. This is something that he cut out. It's waxed, but then he's marked the little circles in there. He's incised them there. So, you know, this is like, we call it a source, even though it's actually an artwork. And he even put a hole in it so he could hang it up. So that tells, you know, the importance and the care that the interest and the dedication he had for all this kind of comprehensive, thoughtful process. So, and it doesn't end there. Sorry, it doesn't end there. I'll just use this one as to insert, is that this is the same thing, even though it's extremely abstract and you can hardly tell what it is, but in conjunction with all the rest, you know that it comes from this same room. So, you know, the prolificness of all of these varieties of techniques and approaches and whatever is amazing. Okay, we're not done, because here we go. You know, these are pattern works. They're separate from this as a category, but hugely related, These beautiful pattern works. Okay, we're not done. Because these also relate. Because here we have what we call samplers. You see? Let's see here. Yeah. All of this is highly related here. And here's another collage right here. I don't know if it's really visible. Very small little actually dots or little circles that look at the resonance that it has with his pattern work. So, and then here, this is a really unusual piece, actually, this one. And I call it kind of like a vocabulary of his sampler of all his kind of different kind of patterns, of which is evidenced in other work and is evidenced right here in this one, with both the lines. Well, here, we'll just put it out like this, just for you to see that. And then not only that, he makes them into, you know, things like this. Pattern works like this. Incorporates his sort of iconic shapes that are consistent throughout his work. These shapes are, I don't know, represent the, you know, the essence of structure that he continually uses over and over again. You know, inventive. And now here's something, and you say, okay, it took all of these associations, of course, developed over time. But I'm telling you that in any one day, something can happen that you discover something else. And actually, just today, I discovered this one. I'd already realized that this is that same room, but this was cut out. He cut this out for some reason. And by some weird, I don't know, wondering what things were, I saw this piece right here. And I knew what was on the back of this. This was on the back. Well, this fits in right here. He cut that out, pasted it on this piece of paper, and and then he cut out these little triangles that are there. Well, when I was looking for what I was going to use tonight, one of these pieces had come off, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's the pattern that's on the other side. It matches the pattern on the other side. Well, I'm not going to take all this off. I'm going to restore it. But that's what I mean. That was just today. So, it's kind of like endless. I mean, okay, let's see, what else? Oh, here. This is another example that's similar, is that, let's see, yeah, this one. I mean, and it kind of brings to mind empty rooms because, okay, and it also is a good example of how he, compositionally, what he does is over on this edge is just the barest suggestion of a bed. So already he has, and of course this is too, but already he's incorporated almost all four sides, because the bed would be on the reverse side. That's on one side. This perhaps is on the other side. This one. So, okay, this too. Okay, folks, he's saying, if you don't get this, that he's outlined here, then here it is close up. It's like he's saying, hopefully you'll at some point see these. So let's put this like this. And oh my gosh, just imagine if you didn't have all of these to, talk to each other or speak to people. I mean, how kind of tragic for Castle. Because it exposes his, I'd say, genius. So this kind of thing is hard to give out to people and have it be seen this way.
Yeah, Andre, one of the questions I had for you, which you are like visually already answered, which is what remains unknown to us about
What
Castle.
remains unknown? Okay, I got examples of that too. And I'll make it, I don't know how we're doing on time, but.
Well, we've got 10 minutes, so
okay. We still have to do the.
Yep. Yeah, we got one more thing that we're going to do after this.
Okay. Why is this? Okay, there. Okay, this is what I kind of call a narrative. So he does kind of, he's imaginative, hard to decipher, things going on with imaginary people and things. And so that's one thing that is sort of untapped because of the nature of the drawing. It's not as well received probably as with the fine line drawings and so on of the soot. But if you want to know all of Castle, you can't ignore parts of it. The other part that keeps being emphasized and I don't know, not acknowledged as for what it is what is monochrome. And here's two examples, which both of these would be monochrome, colored obviously, and then the monochrome, what I would call narratives. That's for lack of any kind of, words. That's what I'd call them, because things are going on that you don't get. Even with this one, imaginary people and so on and so forth. So that's one area. And another one, which there's a piece in the show. In fact, it's just behind you, the wall section, the rectangle. I believe, well, it's easily seen that Castle is so interested in structure, and he was able to depict structure both in the outside world and as structure for like an underpinning of the world he drew. So it's these, and you just have to, look at his work differently, because at first, the average person might think, well, so what? This is just okay, it's what it is. But no, it's not. It's elegance, simplicity, and this one, it's thick, it's visceral, it's you just, and each one begins to feel differently and have a physical presence. There's this one, they just, and then when you get them, that's the thing about Castle, when you get these together and show them together in groups, then you begin to really see the exquisiteness of simplicity, archetypal sort of core of existence. I don't know, yeah, this kind of. So these are only two, that I picked out. There's, other things. And
So Andre, I wonder
huh?
if now is a good time for us to do our concluding thing that we were talking about doing.
Okay, just
Okay.
one other thing. This
Okay.
is not,
I mean, honestly, we should have made this a 2-hour long event, because I think this is so interesting to see you pull out, the connection here and draw that really incredible line between the drawings and the works and the constructed works.
can you make this closer to see this? Yeah, I would like to point out, as far as when you asked about, learning from Castle, what it's meant to me. There's the, I don't know, the humanness of him that you see in everything he does, the humanness and all of the aspects of what it means to be human, you see. And one of the more touching ones is often like the size of and all of this kind of is demonstrated in the exhibit there. But this book was going to be in the exhibit, and unfortunately, people are not able to feel this work, because this particular book, it represents, the sort of tender, fragile, sort of treasuring small things. And hopefully you can see it. Each of these tiny, tiny letters have been cut out and applied in a systematic grid-like pattern. And at the beginning of this, and presumably he couldn't read, but I think it forms a sort of like the essence of his inner self in a way, is that says, "Your fair white plume unstained, O gallant heart, armored in triple mail from every ill." Well, isn't that the sort of description that we would kind of want for ourselves, a gallant heart, and that we're sort of protecting ourselves from every ill? And then this, simple but really sort of eloquently drawn little pink figure in pink, so, and it's only that page. This book is only that one page. So, okay, we'll get on with it.
All right. So, Andre, that was unbelievable. I mean, it's hard to articulate the experience of being in the archive with you, but I feel like we did the best we could by experiencing your hands touching these works and like making these connections that you only really can get because of your brain and your relationship to Castle. So what we were hoping to do tonight, and it's kind of unusual, but we were thinking that we would end this presentation. And so I'm imagining this is going to go over, so feel free to jump off whenever. But we're going to end this presentation with sort of like a silent meditation of Andre unboxing one of her many archival boxes. So she's going to, and tell me what the image is. What are we looking at?
Okay, Castle. Well, I'll preface it with we put together a piece for a person with 99 houses, and it was, you know, we have pictures of it. Anyway, these are various styles, and he loved houses. That's just all there is to it. You can, know what he loved by what he did. And he certainly loved houses. This probably because of the structure. Anyway, they're houses. It's various, some are grouped, some aren't. They're some different sizes.
So we will say farewell to you all with a silent meditation on houses as Andre unboxes a very special box inside the archive, one of many.
It's one of the archival boxes that we have, so, inventory boxes.
With that, I'm going
to... It's an inventory box of
an
houses.
Inventory box, an archival inventory box. So with that, I'm going to mute our microphones and turn off our cameras and just allow you the space to unbox this archival collection box.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Andre.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you. And the installation is magnificent, I'll have to say. I mean, really, the whole physical presentation has a world of its own.
It was a great collaboration, Andre, and a great privilege. All right, well, take care, everyone. We do have the show up. If you are in town, we are open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 11 to 6. We hope to see you in person. Take care.